Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Free Rotation Podcast. I'm your host for this episode. My name is Becky, and I'm joined with my other people, Chris.
Hello.
That's very in tune with what this episode's about this week. And Angela.
Hello.
Not in tune with what our episode is about this week. We're talking about Appalachian legends. Yay! So yeah, guys. So we, last episode that totally came out in time for Halloween. We were talking about a lot of different stories, different stuff about I think really the last thing we talked about was like the hills have eyes and like the other sort of people and all that stuff. And so that kind of inspired me to talk about the Appalachians, because I think a lot of people have this like misidentification about the Appalachians in general and the people who live there now. A lot of that is very much changed in the scheme of things. However, what has stayed very, very true to itself is the legends of the Appalachians. If you're not familiar, where we live in Georgia, and that is considered the foothills of the Appalachians. It actually spans from Canada to Alabama and Georgia. It's one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, actually, 480 million years old. For a long time, I mean, this was like it's just one of those places that you visit and you can kind of just feel the energy of how different it is. It's very much skewed and perceived with all of these different stories, especially because of the history of the people who came there. There's a lot of Native Americans that lived in Appalachia. And there was also a lot of Irish and Scottish immigrants that moved to the Appalachians and brought a lot of superstition there. So today we're going to talk a little bit about different stories, different legends that sort of are very common, but if you're not from the Appalachian area or sort of where we live, you may not be familiar with it. I know a lot of people know about the Mothman. That's an Appalachian cryptid. Same with Sasquatch, also an Appalachian cryptid. The Bell Witch is a ghost story that has been told throughout the United States, and that's also considered Appalachia. I kind of wanted to hit on stories that we've all kind of heard about through our time living here. And so it makes for a little bit more of an interesting talk if we're not just talking about everything that's been beaten into the ground at this point. So the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about, and it's sort of something I had never heard of before a couple of years ago when we were talking about, was the Moon-Eyed People, and that's more closer to our area. The Moon-Eyed People, if anybody has ever heard of it, they were considered these like pale skin, like approximately 3 feet high people with maybe beards that had blue eyes, and they called them Moon-Eyed People. This was a Cherokee legend initially that's believed that these people came from underground and that they could only come out at night. And Cherokee legend says that they were able to drive them out of their home when the moon was full, or drive them underground because they were never seen in their legends. But what kind of has perceived the story for so long is the fact that there are monuments and walls and different things that are in ruin that appear to be very, very old and were attributed to the Moon-Eyed People being the ones who built it.
I just wanted to insert here, Becky, like, they're going to hear a lot of different stories that seem like they're Native American, maybe they're European or Irish, because the Appalachian people, and some people say Appalachian and some say Appalachian, so, that's...
We're not going to be offended either way.
Yeah. The Appalachian people, they're a separate culture, so you can't really identify them as Native American, which a lot of people say, the Moon-Eyed People were kind of similar, but they were at war with the Native Americans because they were different, because it's like Native Americans, Irish, English, Scotch, and then descendants of German and Polish immigrants are all along there. So these is just an unusual group of people.
And when they're talking about the Moon-Eyed People, they're talking long before Columbus got here.
Right.
And the Cherokee considered them a whole separate... Typically in Cherokee legends, it's not that a lot of their creatures and people and their legendary things weren't other. They were just part of the
grand scheme of things.
The Moon-Eyed People were other. They considered them a completely separate race.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk that there were not like, in recent history that maybe they were aliens. There was some thought that maybe it was early English settlers or even Norse settlers, because if most, history does say that like Leif Erikson had come here very early on in like the 1080, I think, or whatever.
Well, and there's even older legends that back when the continents were Pangea, the Appalachian Mountains went all the way up through that's Ireland, England, Scotland. Right. So it was all connected right there. And that they're actually fairy folk who got stranded here.
Right. Yeah, there's a whole, like, you can see a lot of similarities with the Cherokee stories and, like, the Irish stories about the Fae folk and being, like, underground people. Like, there was a race of people that were able to drive them underground. That's a very similar story. And they were pale, blue-eyed, different...
Why did I picture them like, you're the wheel? There's like Cirque du Soleil and people under the ground.
Oh my God. It is kind of scary to think about. Like, there's just people underground. But Cherokee legend does say they were able to drive them out, which, you know, it could be a lot of different things. But what has been kind of the, like, long-term thing that has existed is these structures, like old ruins that exist in North Carolina and in Georgia. Specifically here, we actually went to Fort Mountain. We did not see them. They were actually kind of hard to hike to. So we did not go to them because... I'm fat.
By God, we're doing it next year,
Yeah,
though.
we'll do it next year. And I think time-wise, we just didn't have time. But we went up to Fort Mountain, and it's beautiful up there. It's definitely nice to camp at. But there is a, like, ruined wall that is allegedly thousands of years old. And it's attributed, and you can even see it when you go to Fort Mountain, that it's attributed to the Moon-Eyed people.
And again, there's still relics and stuff that pop up occasionally that the Cherokee are just like, this isn't ours. We didn't do this.
Right.
And they just... and you don't hear a lot about, like, typically if you're on Native American, on their ancestral homes and you find relics, it's usually almost always attributed to that tribe or those people. But the Cherokee are very much anti, this isn't ours. And it's like, interesting.
And the way this wall was built, it was a really unusual wall because nobody here built walls like that. It was like a very Romanesque, like reminiscent wall. It was a low stone wall. Because I guess Moon-Eyed people are very short.
Yeah, try hopping over that shit.
And they would take the high ground, and you know they built these stone walls. And when you look at it and you look at the old walls back in Europe, you're like, that's very similar.
Right. Yeah, it's just a strange story that I didn't hear about this until a couple of years ago.
I didn't hear about it till we went to Fort Mountain.
Right.
And then Casey was like, "Look at this video about these Moon-Eyed people." I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, but it's something that's kind of been pervasive for years. I think there's an entire museum in North Carolina, I want to say, that has the Moon-Eyed people, like a whole thing about the Moon-Eyed people. So it's something that's kind of like been like in existence for a long time. But it's one of those things you never hear about because I think it kind of gets relegated into like the aliens, like, hey, it's an alien being. But then you hear that like the story comes from Cherokee legend about these people. So there's a lot of back and forth. Like, are these like English settlers that they were just attributing to calling them the Moon-Eyed people because they didn't know how else to describe them? Or is this something that existed way before English settlers showed up?
And interestingly enough, when we were in Dahlonega, they were talking about, you know, the gold rush, but even way before the gold rush, like these huge beasts, the Bigfoot, and I can't remember their word for it in the native language, but it would protect the gold, and it had little friends which looked a lot like Moon-Eyed people. And it was like they were always accompanied by these, you know, little people with huge eyes and like that. I'm like, well, this is still Appalachia, so
yeah,
Appalachia.
So yeah, that's a local tale near to us.
It's interesting because Appalachian, that native tribe is from Tallahassee, Florida, and it says they spread up north. But it means like from the other side or like on the other side, which is interesting.
Yeah, this it is interesting. Like the mountain range itself was actually supposed to be purported to be bigger than the Rocky Mountains, like in size, but due to like, you know, erosion and stuff. But I mean, just think about all of the people who've ever existed that have been sort of in that area. So it's just oral tales that have just gone for hundreds of years through that. I know oral tales. But yeah, so
yeah, we think of like United States. Oh, we're a young country, but we always forget that this is very old land.
Yeah,
with like the oldest, deepest rivers in the world, the oldest mountain range in the world. It is in the world, right?
Yeah, I think
Fuji Mountain.
The Rocky Mountains are considered one of the no.
I know it's the longest mountain range.
The
Appalachian,
the longest mountain range is the Rockies. The oldest, one of the oldest, is the Appalachians. So yes,
and it split, and you could see like literally where it picks up on the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's weird.
And that range is actually, I think, what Fuji is part of it.
Right.
It keeps going across, so it ends at this huge like mountain in the sky with this forest that you can't.
Yeah, it's weird, but hey, it's worth to me. I think that if you ever want to come and see things about Moon Eye people, so it'd be in North Carolina and Georgia, and so that's why I keep mentioning where they're located, because a lot of these stories take place in different places.
Right. If we say like the Blue Ridge Mountains,
that could be Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina.
Yeah,
they're pretty big.
Now the town of Blue Ridge, which I thought that Blue Ridge Mountains were there. I'm like, and people would say Blue Ridge. I'm like, oh, in Georgia. No, in North Carolina.
Surprise.
Shocker.
Well, another story that's pretty popular here, which also takes place in North Carolina. You're going to see kind of a pattern with North Carolina, but I think that's just because it's more of the epicenter of the Appalachians, is Brown Mountain. Brown Mountain is an interesting story because, once again, it does involve Native American legend, but this time it involves the Cherokee and the Catawba, and I think it was I can't remember if it was the Civil War. I think it was the Civil War. But there was a legend that during these big battles, one was especially fought on Brown Mountain. And at the end of that battle, the Catawba people, the women of that tribe, used torches and went up to the mountain to see if they could locate their dead, their husbands, their brothers, their sons, all of that.
So definitely, I'll just insert here. Pre-Civil War, 1789. This was like during Revolutionary times, is when the Catawba women were looking for their dead sons and fathers with lanterns.
I feel like I did read, though, there was another story involving the Civil War where there was another battle that was fought there, and it was also thought to be also musket fire that people were seeing. And we'll get into why this is important in the first place. But.
Well, and it's important that it was the women who went, because another thing about the Appalachian tribes, and even if you hear the term Appalachian woman, these are very matrilineal lines. The families are predominantly matron-led. Like the grandma is like your highest,
Right.
I can't think of, but just to say matrilineal, the power seat isn't in the men in these families. It's the women. Not that they run the whole family. It's just if decisions are made about the family, and if there's witches in the family or wise women. I mean, it's in these Appalachian out of the way. Tribes of people.
Right. So the legend goes, and this has been pretty pervasive for a couple hundred years now, is that one of those being that it's women, or what you see on Brown Mountain are these lights, and it could be different color lights. It's not just what appears to be torchlight, but some people say it's red lights, blue lights. They could be huge lights. So there is a lot of ideas that there's UFO activity there too. What happens is that on nights after there's been a storm, you can go and at any lookout point, and you can actually see these lights moving. And it doesn't look like car lights. I think in the early 1900s, a lot of people attributed it to a train that was there. But what happened is that train's railways were actually washed out. And these lights have still been going on for the last 60
to this
or so
day.
years. Yeah.
And so some people think, oh, it's will-o'-the-wisps. And then you have, no, it's ball lightning. There's a perfect conflux up there to create ball lightning, which is extremely rare. You wouldn't see it often, and nothing gets set on fire, so it's really hard to believe it's ball lightning.
Right. And so a lot of what a lot of people also talk about is it looks depending on what you see that night. So some people have seen what appears to be torchlight. Some people have seen these intelligent moving lights, lights that seem to be moving autonomously on their own. You could see it on a tree in the mountain, and then suddenly it's up to the tip of the mountains.
And those are more blue and green.
Yeah. And some people say it sometimes looks like headlights, but it's very rare. But I mean, North Carolina tourism in Brown Mountain can tell you exactly where to go to watch these lights, and it's a very consistent thing. I think we've seen a few YouTube videos.
And stay tuned to your free rotation, because we've made plans. I think we agreed for next year to go camp up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're gonna sacrifice somebody to the lights.
I don't think we talked about that.
I'm pretty sure we agreed.
That's you, Cat. We're coming for that ass.
That's right.
But it's weird, but it's I don't know. There was apparently a study, or I'm sorry, it was a paranormal investigator and a scientist. I don't remember their names, but they actually went to Appalachian State University, and they were there debating whether it was considered paranormal or if it was considered there was a scientific explanation. And at the very end of it, they said they could not make any determination just because of the way the lights act. I mean, you could go on a random Tuesday and they act like torchlight, and then the other day it looks like you have 4 lights that are forming a UFO. So
Right, and they did determine that they're not eyes because they don't stay symmetrical and equidistant as they move.
right, and you can see them pretty far out because a lot of the lookout points are actually not on the mountain whatsoever. You go to different part where there's like highways and different lookout points on other mountains, and they tell you to park there and just to wait at night. Some of them are a little scary to trek to. But if you wait there, you'll be able to see whatever's coming off the mountain. But it's really supposed to be during October and November is the best time to see it. And it's after a rainstorm is the best time to see it for these lights. So
It just makes it sound like something natural and scientific, but
Fireflies fucking.
well, but the thing is, like, but what would explain the red and blue lights? And, like, some people see giant orbs. Some people see, like, tiny little lights. But I guess it's all perception.
Yeah. You know what else you see after a rain? A rainbow, which is a bunch of different colored lights.
True. But at night?
I'm not saying there's not something weird. Methane
shining.
gas that
yeah.
picks up the light and
think
just
about
reflects it.
fire. Fire's all sorts of different colors.
Yeah.
It's also blue, orange, red, or white. Probably a variety of colors.
I mean, it literally could be some, like, lighter than air gas that's literally refracting light through as it goes up. I mean,
maybe something with the hydrogen in the water. Like, it'd be
know.
interesting. Maybe when we see them, we'll be like, oh, shit, there's no way.
Well,
I'm going to try to shoot one, so.
Yeah. Why not? Just to see what happens, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What if I drop it?
Well, and I wonder, like, what... I mean, I'm sure people
maybe
have tried...
it's fairy lights.
Or, yeah, and I mean, I wonder what experimentation people have done. Like, have they taken samples from the soil? Maybe it is something reflective in the mountain itself. Maybe it's a mineral. Maybe it's something to that effect that makes it just glow.
Some weird crystal formation of, like, quartz that is just a prism.
That's how they used to find gold, is it would glint.
Yeah.
It would shine after certain, the sun would glint off of, especially in a rain.
Yeah.
Maybe there's diamonds up there.
Or it operates like the Pink Floyd album, where he's had the light go through the prism, and it's just that's just how the light's reflected through the.
Yeah, it's so strange though that really what they talk about, it needs to be like in the middle of the night though. Like that's the only thing that kind of throws me off is it's like it's not like you can go go in the middle of the day and see these lights. It's like it's best to see them in the middle of the night after a rainstorm.
Maybe it's a temperature thing,
and it may be a temperature because they said October and November are a big time, and those are generally cold months. So it could be freezing, it could be frost, could be something to that effect. But it's just an interesting story.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so do you want to talk about...
I do.
Okay, it's your turn. I just wanted to get my 2 stories out of the way because they weren't that interesting. But
they are interesting.
Y'all have the more interesting stories, in my opinion.
I don't.
You don't have your cryptid? You don't like your cryptid?
It's boring.
I want to talk about the not deer. Dun, dun, dun.
All right, Okay. Now explain to people, we're not talking about like a knot.
No. It's just they're deer, but they're not deer. And here's some key... Okay. Becky, we talked about this earlier. Mm-hmm. When you see an animal, you can know one thing by looking directly at it, and that's what?
If they're a predator or a prey.
And you can tell it by what?
Whether their eyes are on the side of their heads or if they're facing forward.
Right, so you automatically know if you're in danger, immediately.
I totally knew that by myself.
That's a furry thing. Where's his eyeballs? That's why koalas, when you see them, you need to be... Their eyes are here. They're going to eat you. People are always... confused and conflicted by koalas. And
the good news is koalas are the dumbest animal on God's green earth because they don't have the wrinkly parts of their brain. They're all smooth brain.
Exactly.
It's like God
followed by pandas. Neither of these are... pandas are carnivores and they chose to eat plants they couldn't reach because they're too fat.
They're big bears that are dumb as hell.
Yeah.
Which it's funny because it's like if they had at least one wrinkle in their brain, we probably would be on the low end of the food totem pole. But no, God decided to give
your ankle off.
Yeah, koalas that...
Yeah, they have thumbs and everything. Like, there's a reason.
And to put this in perspective, koalas they only eat one thing, eucalyptus leaves. They only eat eucalyptus leaves off the tree. If you sit a koala down and give him a bowl of eucalyptus leaves, he doesn't know what to do with it. He will not eat it. He will starve to death.
He'll starve to death. And they've proven repeatedly after these fires, koalas will starve because they won't eat what's literally right in front of them. They only know one thing, and that's climb a tree. Meanwhile, they're carnivores. They could eat a bug. They could eat a mouse. But nope, we got to climb this tree that, by the way, doesn't support our weight.
Also, the leaves have no nutritional value.
No.
They have to grind them so hard into a paste that they grind their teeth down to nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's how they normally die. They starve to death because they've ground their teeth away eating this rock tree.
Either that or they fall out of the trees to their death because the trees don't support their weight. They're like, how did they... I was reading this thing and it said there must have been something that happened where they were forced, like, thousands of years ago to eat eucalyptus leaves to survive.
They had one bad, like, mouse, and it just completely ruined everything.
You know what? I get a little indigestion. I'm going to eat those leaves.
I wonder if they de-evolved. Like, they had the wrinkly brains, and then they were like, fuck this is too much thinking.
Maybe.
Let's go dum-dum with it.
I mean, here's the thing. They got little thumbs, so they can do
claws
stuff.
And I mean, they have
and
incisors.
Teeth until they, like, gnaw them down.
Yeah. They starve themselves. I mean, they're the dumbest animal on the planet as a whole. And they're supposed to be vicious, and you could just use them like a soccer ball, and they can't do shit about it.
No. They'll be like, I don't even know what just happened. There was a person and a foot. I better climb that tree I'm going to fall out of.
If you put them in an oak tree, they'll starve to death. Only eucalyptus, and only if it's attached to the tree.
That is like the definition of a picky eater.
Yeah. I was watching these videos where zoos have to take eucalyptus and string it on a tree like it's on the tree.
Or they'll starve.
And even then, if they can tell, like, you're dumb as a rock, but you can tell a eucalyptus leaf is zip tied on. Okay.
Well, speaking of eucalyptus trees.
So the knot deer. There's a lot of stories, like, they'll see, you'll be walking along in the woods. Sometimes at night, sometimes during the day. It doesn't really matter when you come across one. But you'll see a deer that's staring at you. Not afraid of you at all. He can be on 2 legs or 4. But he has forward-facing eyes and an elongated nose. And he just shows no fear. Now, there's not really reports of them attacking. But that's because you leave. If you see a knot deer, no, you didn't. You pretend you didn't. You go inside your house and you're done for the day. That's it.
No, thank you.
Don't engage him.
We're definitely engaging it.
There's
this
stories
is the guy
of
that
people
wants to
are
hunt
like,
a Bigfoot just to eat it.
well, these people are like, I saw him. He got up on 2 feet and kind of, and they walk in like weird lurching motions. And I'm thinking, okay, that could be with the wasting disease that deers get.
CWD.
Because it does make them, think of like mad cow disease, but for deers it's called chronic wasting
disease.
And it causes them to walk weirdly and not be afraid. They become a little more violent.
It doesn't cause them to become bipedal.
Exactly.
That's not a thing.
So when they stand up on their back feet and hop and skip and jump at you, just leave. And usually right before you see these, you'll hear like a whistle behind you. All of these things you don't respond to, you just leave.
Isn't it like, are the knot deer the ones that are also associated with if you hear your name, you don't answer? Or is that the skinwalker?
That's the skinwalker.
Okay.
But a lot of people think the knot deer are the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't respond to your name being called. If somebody's not there with you and you don't see their mouth move, don't respond to it. Don't look behind you. Just get inside, close and lock your door. Now, there's a Irish superstition that if you know evil is around, you whistle to ward evil off. In Appalachia, apparently, it's a little bit different. You don't want to whistle. You attract the attention of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely whistling, and we're trying. If it says my name, we're turning around. We're not running into a door because, deer have hooves and they can't handle a doorknob. We're going to figure out what the fuck these things are. Like, here's clink, clink, clink as he's trying to open the door. No.
Just rattle, rattle, rattle.
Absolutely not.
Meanwhile, a koala could open the door, not smart enough to.
And deer be like, hey, can you come open this door with your thumb?
He's holding the koala up with his hooves, and the koala's just staring at him blankly.
It's like, hey, what?
What do you want me to do?
I don't even think they have that kind of thought. I think it's just like leaf, 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 poop, leaf, 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 dead.
And a lot like pandas too, they have a very slow, they don't even acknowledge that they need to mate to serve. They don't really have that instinct. So a lot of zoos have had to introduce them together and encourage them, use pheromones, and even then it's 3 to 5 years.
You have to become the koala fluffer.
Yeah, come on, buddy, you got it.
You got this, little man.
But even then, like, He
Don't make eye contact. What do you do? That'd be a funny LinkedIn profile right there. Like, what do you do? Koala
I'm
fluff.
a koala fluffer.
I manually masturbate caged animals for artificial insemination.
Yeah. Because if she says no, he doesn't push it.
That's a line from Clerks, by the way. It's important to have a job that matters. No, what do you do? I manually masturbate caged animals for artificial insemination.
That'd be... Can you imagine you're trying to, be intimate with your partner and then boom, you get a flashback of your day of masturbating animals?
She aggressively starts jerking you off like you're a horse. Just really getting after it. You're like, ah! You're going to yank it off.
It's not that sturdy, please.
No, we are definitely... If we see a not deer, we're definitely acknowledging it. We're going to be like, hey, the fuck are you?
This is why you're white.
We're just like, here, kitty.
Let me ask you, what has happened to anybody who has acknowledged it? No one knows, because everybody's a pussy and runs to their house.
Or they're dead. We just don't know.
We're going to die some way. At least I get to figure it out.
Make sure you have, like, a GoPro on it.
It's going to be like the were deer, and now I'm a fucking not deer.
Oh, my God. Wouldn't that be
Maybe
awful?
That's how... If Chris suddenly starts whistling and just lurches at me, I'm done. I'm be like, nope.
Turn around.
You just see Chris go into like a feed store, just going crazy on the deer feed,
Yeah,
just
the
with like the deer corn, just fucking it up.
Just rolling around
Like,
in it,
how do
Scrooge
you
McDuck style.
How do you become a weredeer? Well, during mating season.
Ooh, what a terrifying were animal. It's a deer.
Yeah.
We just get and watch the windows eating popcorn as Chris at the door trying to open it.
They keep planting clover, and I keep like, it's delicious.
Look at him, he's eating a dandelion.
I want to get in there and fuck him up.
Dandelion.
But clover.
So tasty. Fuck.
Yeah, no. We're going to figure out what's going on.
Casey creeps out with a saddle. I've always wanted to do this. Want to be Lady Godiva on a deer.
But no, like, I do wonder, like, because other than the fear of whatever is going to happen, there are no stories of what's going to happen. It's just you don't acknowledge it.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Fuck that. We're going to acknowledge it.
Like, what I've learned about, like, living in this area and, like, being a visitor into the Appalachian Mountains, a lot of people, like, if you watch any videos about it, they're like, don't acknowledge it. Don't look at it. Don't talk to it. And it's like,
and they don't tell you why.
This is like very evasive. Like, we're just like, like in Japan, like if you see like an oni and it's like asking you, have you pooped today? You're supposed to answer, well, my mother is a cunt. Like those are like, it tells you how to like fight back on these things. Here, they're just like,
sorry, Miss Rondo, we actually like you.
Just be like avoid, like it's like avoiding. It's like just teaching you to be an introvert is really what it's doing.
And the way I look at it is typically like when you're and that's how these stories go. Like it's like you're teaching children because they don't know. But when I'm a kid and my dad's like, hey, don't get into a van with a stranger, and I say why, and my dad's like, because he might fuck you. That makes sense to me.
Exactly.
Why don't I talk to this deer? And there's no answer. We're going to talk to the fucking deer. We're about to figure some shit out.
Maybe the deer is like, man, I've got some really important shit to tell somebody. And everybody runs away.
I think it also like kind of goes back to like the idea of what like skinwalkers are and stuff. You're supposed to not acknowledge a skinwalker or not just fuck.
But we have definitive reasons. They kill you and take your face. I was about to say,
like, there's a reason why Fuck Around and Find Out is the like main logo for skinwalkers. Like, this is what it is. But like, not deer have never been attributed to skinwalkers. I think it's just they're just deer that look fucked up. Like, what does it make you do, bro? I don't get it.
So here's the thing. What if he's a genie and everybody's just like, nope, not today, genie. Not giving me
like,
3
that
wishes.
Was the best. That was like the best PR he could ever come up with. It's like, hey, let people know they shouldn't fuck with me. Why? Just tell them, because that's even scarier. And for like the last 300 years, nobody's fucked with him, but he's like the guy who's like, I'll give you $1 million, I'll give you like $300 billion. Yeah. You'll have the best life. And by the way, I'm an adorable pet. Like, these are the things that you didn't expect.
And boom, he's just a sweet koala.
So, and my thing is, like, in nature, non-dangerous animals will typically try to mimic dangerous ones. So if he's trying to mimic a skinwalker, but he's not really, because nothing ever happens.
I think the best is, like, not deer are just trying to act like skinwalkers because they're actually just regular prey, like a normal deer.
He's a big, colorful butterfly that makes you think he's poisonous, but he's a fucking butterfly, so who gives 2 shits?
Yeah. Like, I'm going to pet you because you're pretty.
Yeah, I just don't care.
I think, though, like, part of it, though, in all seriousness, is just the idea that, like, you just see this thing out in the woods and you're just like, it doesn't have an explanation to it, and you're just like, what am I supposed to do? Nothing, I guess.
So if you spend enough time in the woods, you see a lot of weird shit, because animals are fucking weird. And they do...
Yeah, true.
I mean, again, if you spend enough time out there, you're going to see a lot of odd things, a lot of weird stuff.
Well, even people who like take
And it's just because we're not used to it.
Yeah, to us it's weird.
On top of it, like the Appalachian Mountains it's not. Don't picture like a normal mountain range like you would in like the Rocky Mountains where it's just mountains. The Appalachians are like forested mountains. A lot of it is forest. A lot of it is dense wood. There's a ton of cave systems out there. There's a lot of unexplored area in the Appalachian Mountains. So what you could be seeing out there is just something that naturally occurs, but because we cannot get into the Appalachian Mountains without possibly dying.
Or again, you think about our lives now. We don't spend a lot of time out in nature. We just don't. Not like actual wooded nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might go to the dog park. You might go to the park, but that ain't nature.
Like, I don't know
That's
what happens
people.
when a bird dies. Does he just yeet out of the sky? Does he die in his nest in his sleep? Like, we don't know these things. We just see, like, a dead body. So, if I saw a bird, like, careening out of the sky to its death, I'd be like, oh, shit. That was
what
weird.
caused it.
Meanwhile, it's just nature.
Also, there used to be a chemical that we would... when I was younger, in pest control, we had a job that was getting pigeons off of courthouse buildings.
Yeah.
And you give them this corn that was called Avitrol. And Avitrol was basically like bird LSD. So you go up to the roof and you throw corn everywhere, and the pigeons loved it because it's just free corn. And then they start flying and forget they were flying, or flap as hard as they could just straight at the ground. So you'd occasionally, after you did this at the courthouse, see birds just dive bombing the front stoop for no good reason.
That's terrifying.
Hilarious if you're on the roof watching.
Yeah.
And then they made us stop using that stuff because, bird bombs.
Yeah.
But they would just take off and fly and be fine and just stop flying.
But there's a reasonable explanation for what was happening. Like, in nature, you just don't know.
Well, that, and again, if you spend a lot of time in some woods, you'll see squirrels hanging out next to, like, big hawks and stuff. Like, not afraid. They're just kind of on the same branch. And you're like, maybe they're homies. Or maybe the hawk's full. Or maybe the squirrel's fucking stupid. I don't know. But it's not something you would imagine is normal. But it happens a million times a day in every set of woods across the world. But you're just not there to see it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, so what you're saying is you're going to explore the woods and see some not deer hunting?
If Chris is there, I can be brave. If it's by myself, no.
She yelled. Remember when we were at the cabin that we had rented and y'all had stayed with us? Because I literally went out to make sure the fire was out, and she was convinced a not deer was going to get me.
Becky, you went out by yourself.
I'm literally in a neighborhood on the mountains with
and
lights
then when she
everywhere.
came in, I wasn't convinced she was herself.
She was like, "Are you a skinwalker?" I'm like, "Yeah." I don't know how I don't convince you I'm not.
She didn't answer appropriately.
The question is, would skinwalkers actually answer you the right way?
Like, what is the question you're going to ask me?
I just told that creepy ass story out at the campfire. Remember?
Yeah, talking about not
Scared
deer, and I'm like,
myself.
"Oh, let me go check the fire."
And like, somebody came back, somebody's face, and they came in and killed them all. Yeah, I was scared. I scared myself.
Also, the majority of Angie's fears are her terrifying herself.
It's true.
For no apparent reason than she wants to pee all everywhere.
I just get scared of stuff. I'm just.
Do you remember though what Matthew said though? Because you had said like, I don't even know if it's you. And she's like, "Don't worry, Angie, it is Becky." Like,
yeah,
he didn't even
yeah, sweet little Matt. And then he smiles at me like, "Gotcha, bitch." Yeah, I'm like, you are not as nice as we think you are.
No, if anybody became a skinwalker, it's Matt.
It's Matt.
He just sits there like, I'm gonna fuck everybody up just quietly and nobody knows.
And even as he like started killing us all, we'd be like,
and
he's so sweet.
Nobody would believe that my brother did it. My parents would be convinced I did it and somehow blamed him, even though I'm dead.
Well, and if I'm still alive, I would totally like.
It was definitely Becky.
I would troll till the end. It was Becky. So. You're not going to be happy without me. I'll tell you that. You're going to be in prison.
But no, I definitely want to. That kind of thing, like, I'd want to find out what it's about.
Yeah.
Because there is no second half to the, well, you don't respond story. It's just, you just don't do it.
Don't do it. It's like,
why?
But why? And I feel like, here's the thing about the but why. Like, if we didn't do but why, we wouldn't have penicillin. We wouldn't have a lot of explanations for things like the earth being round or stuff like that. Like, people who went but why, like, figured these things out.
Well, and Becky, I told you why the not deer scare me so much. I told you when I lived in Maryland what happened. Mm-hmm. So when I was at the Pax River Naval Air Station. I lived in town in this house, and it was situated right between the Chesapeake Bay and the Potomac River. It's a little peninsula that you see on Maryland. I lived right at the bottom, the very end, so 3 sides by water. And then one night, I just had this feeling like something was staring at me. You know how you get that feeling? And I look at the back door, and there's a fucking deer. I don't even know how they got up the steps because it wasn't like a porch. It was a really super old house. And they don't have, like, porches and stairs and shit because you're literally at the water on each end. And it's standing somehow, and it's looking in the door. Just looking. And it scared the shit out of me. Like, I've never seen a deer do that before. And no, I didn't go outside because I'm chicken shit. What I did was run and hide in my room under the covers because, of course, nothing can get you there. But, like, how did it get there? So in the morning, we went out back, and I did see the deer tracks everywhere because I wanted to make sure it wasn't,
People.
I don't know. Yeah, like with the deer head on. There were deer tracks, and it went right up to the stupid, like, skinny stone steps, and I'm like, why would it do that? Why was it? I'm sure it was just curious.
Animals
deer.
are dumb.
Yeah, and it's probably like, what are the humans up to today? Especially because I feed everything outside.
Yeah.
It's not like it'd be scared of me, as an actual deer, but it didn't feel right because I could feel that something was watching me, and it felt hooky. It felt hanky, It just felt off.
And I'm going to buy, like, a really nice deer mask and just come tap on your back glass.
Oh, God. I'd be like, I knew it followed me. And then on my last night in Maryland before I went to Canada, we had walked along the Chesapeake Bay side. It's very rocky. If you're unfamiliar with it, the Potomac River is full of jellyfish, and the bay is full of sharks and rocks. So if you ever swim on the Chesapeake, if you ever go up there, wear your rock shoes. You have to wear shoes to go in the water. But we're down there walking on the wall because the tide's coming in. And on the way back, I hear the shriek. And I knew it was a shriek owl, but in my mind, I'm like, it's a banshee deer. I have never
put those words together.
So I outran a 14-year-old boy who definitely, and you know what? He was on his own. Like, if he died, I would have just told his mom sorry.
The motto is like, you don't have to be the fastest, you just have to run faster than the slowest person?
It was just the 2 of us, and I was the fastest. I mean, I was a lot more fit then, to be fair, but no, I left that kid in the dust.
I like to also think this is why we actually kept Scoob around a lot longer than we probably should have.
Scoob ran shockingly fast.
When he got scared, but or there was a corn dog on like a rope or something. Like that.
Yeah.
Like that's really when you saw Scoob making his like little tiny dancer legs go. Like, I mean,
it was crazy. To move that much bulk that fast was shocking.
But
I mean, he would outrun people. And then they had the bright idea to play chicken running. And of course, Scoob won every time.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to bounce you off.
Yeah, he's not getting out of the way.
He's tall. He's 6'6", and he's, big. Yeah.
So now we know when we go camping, we need to separate from Chris.
But Becky, you mentioned like there's also the Bell Witch is there, the Mothman's there.
Yeah, Chris had some cryptids.
All right, Chris, let's go.
So I was gonna get into like the Mothman, which we've done to death because it's one of my favorites.
I mean, we haven't really done a Mothman, but I feel like that's a separate episode to itself because the Mothman sightings are so like prevalent in other places.
But so I was looking into some of them, and there's like one called the Sheep Squatch, which I know sounds made up because it sounds just adorable and fuzzy and warm.
We went from like creepy deer to like adorable Squatch sheep.
But the one I kind of centered on was the Flatwoods Monster, because I'd never heard of it. Apparently, there's a Braxton County, West Virginia. A lot of this is West Virginia for some reason, because that's where the Mothman.
Yeah, they're like the cryptid states.
September 12th, 1952. I'll give you kind of a brief synopsis. I think it's father and a son are outside. They see a flash in the sky, and it hits the ground a couple miles from where they're at, and they see a bright light. So they're interested. So they they drive over to go see what's going on. When they get over there, it looks like, and depending on which story you believe, it's either a craft or a meteor that has hit the ground. And there is a somewhere between 8 and 10 foot tall monster.
Levitating.
It's just hanging out, like outside of the thing, just standing there.
Yeah.
Oh,
like
shit.
Just this giant, big head, big eyes, super tall. Looks like it kind of has like a a bell-shaped, like, lower half dress thing on. And it's just like, sup. They panic and go the other way when they see it.
Yeah.
And they call the cops. They call the local newspaper. They make all kinds of reports. And, yeah, that's the Flatwoods Monster. And I wish I could tell you how super cool it is. So this is at early September. It's like 7 o'clock at night. So it's like not quite pitch black, but super
But it's on the edge
twilight.
of dark, yeah.
So they see it. It's 3 boys. It's not the father and son. It's actually 3 SA boys. They're like 12, 13. It came down. When they get there, they said, when they get to where it crashed, they said it's not like a steady fire. The light they see is like pulsating, like on and off. Like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And they say the thing is about 10 feet tall, somewhere between 8 and 10. It's hard to, and if you haven't ever had to judge anything based, like height-wise, based in fear, it's kind of tough, especially if you're not, it's something you're not expecting to see.
Well, I think one of the stories was that it was actually like, it was 10 foot, but it was levitating. Like, all I pictured was like Stranger Things when they were talking about this thing. Like Vecna.
Yes, sort of like that. But so one of the kids said they thought it was levitating. The other one said that it was standing on the ground because they could see the bell-shaped bottom half and like his feet. But he was just standing there and he had like these super glowy red eyes. And that's not, it wasn't pulsating. It was the light coming from whatever crashed. So it wasn't like his eyes were off and on like electric. Whatever. So it said they had hands. It was around between 8 and 10 feet tall. A very like super wide head with red glowing eyes, claws like for hands, and it was standing on its 2 feet. And like this bottom half that was like, and again, I'm trying to think like how to describe it. Like if you think of like late 1800s women's dresses that had like the big bustles, you know, something like that big bell shape, but it was metal.
Oh, God.
They described it as like a metal skirt, I guess, like a giant skirt, and then his feet underneath it that were also claws, that had claws on the end of them.
He was a pretty lady.
They saw it.
He was a crab.
A 10-foot tall monster is what it was. But they saw it, panicked, and ran away. Again, this is 1952, so we're talking 5 years after Roswell. This is in West Virginia and not out west. There are no tales of whether or not it was a craft or if anybody recovered it. Again, that's the part I'm more interested in. Like, you know, was it a craft?
Yeah, it's like when you look up the story, they tell you about what happened, but then after that, it's like
nothing.
Nothing else. It's like, okay, well, what
Which
happened?
kind of makes you think that
It was a big old
information was suppressed.
Yeah, or these kids got into some bad like wheat and fucking had some bad bread and fucking tripped their nuts off.
Or got
Yeah. It's just, there's so much middle ground that there's no way to tell. People that, you know, skeptics say it was a meteor and they saw a big owl, typically. And that would make sense except for the hands. Like, owls don't have hands.
Or metal skirts.
So I could even see, like, if it had been raining and it was iridescent and it was actually some sort of light from the meteor or whatever still glowing, I could even buy that. But the hands, it's just like, owls don't have hands.
Somebody should have thrown a soda at him to see if he caught it.
Well, owls aren't the brightest. I'm thinking I wouldn't imagine it would land on there.
He might have just been hanging out there. Again,
he might have been sitting in a tree and being like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, people.
You see this shit?
People underestimate how large owls can get because
Right,
they
I
typically
did.
think they're like the size of like, you know, a foot tall.
Yeah, and then they
not
spread their wings,
3.5
especially.
foot tall barn owls that'll scare the bejesus out of
Right,
you.
with a wingspan of what, like 4 feet?
Yeah,
Like they're big.
But for 3 separate boys to say, yeah, this thing came down and it wasn't a meteor, it was pulsating light, it wasn't like a globe.
And it had claw hands and feet.
Yeah, that's the one I'm like, But again,
Yeah.
it's also teenagers at a time in American history where UFOs are the craze. Like, all the comic books, all the weird stories from outer space, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and isn't this about the time Mothman is, like, starting to, or was it the 60s?
70s.
70s.
Mothman
So,
is
I mean,
70s.
there's, like, a lot of weird...
It's just that time in Americana where,
it's,
paranormal things are taking off. I mean, you think about, like, The Exorcist in the 60s.
Yeah.
UFO craze after the 30s and 40s. It's just this time in America where, I don't know, we start to get away from everything is super churchy, I guess, and we're starting to question a lot of things and act like we're getting away
woke
from...
culture is kicking in.
Like, yeah, it's the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like, and it's weird to think about, but it really is. Like, and maybe it is, again, maybe it is UFO, maybe it's Roswell style, I don't know. Because there is no information afterwards. Like, even with Roswell, you have the day after it happens, the Air Force is like, yeah, we got a UFO. And then they retract that story afterwards, but they at least admitted it right away. With this, there are no, other than the boys' tales, there are no stories. So it's just like, is there a 10-foot tall alien monster?
Well, and that's the weird part. Is like now this entire town has kind of dedicated like a museum to the Flatwoods Monster.
Yep.
There's like entire like followings about it.
Well, it's weird because even with like, so you look at the Mothman, all the Mothman stuff technically happened like 46 miles south of Point Pleasant. Mm-hmm. But Point Pleasant is where...
That's it. I mean, it's kind of like Salem, like where the town of Salem is now is not in the same area where the original Salem was.
But no, like, so...
But, like, it's, like, the least, like, there's, like, nothing reported about it, but now it's just, like, here's this monster.
It's this insanely cool story.
With no follow-up.
There's nothing to other than they have kind of, like, artist depictions of what the kids said they saw, and it's fucking terrifying. But that's it. So it's either it was, like, this insane cover-up, or it's 3 bored hillbilly boys. That's it. There's, like, not a lot of good middle ground.
Right. I mean, I think even, like, there was, like, an inquiry from the Air Force about it and stuff like that, but it's, like, only one sighting. That was it. There was just one sighting, and that was the end of it. Yeah.
I mean, it caused kind of, like, an uproar in that county in Braxton or whatever, because everybody was, I mean, again, 1952 West Virginia, there's probably fuck all going on.
Yeah.
So everybody, when you hear a story like that, you get excited because it's something to be excited about. Again, I just don't think there's a lot going on. So there should be cameras were around. There should be pictures. There should be stories of, okay, the government came in and took the craft, something.
Somebody else saw something that night.
Yeah.
It's just the same story.
It's just that one story.
Right, because if it were a meteor, it'd still be there. Like, meteors that big don't just fall and go away.
I just picked it up and took it. Thanks, guys.
Especially if it's big enough to still be in the ground and glowing.
Yeah.
That's... Again, there are a lot of meteor strikes on Earth every day. Most of them are the size of sand. Like, no, it doesn't matter. Something that big would be news. Like, even if it was just a meteor that hit if a meteor hit that big in the hills of where we live, that would be news. Like, everybody would be reporting on it. Mm-hmm. We'd hear about it 100 times a day. Like, hey, did you see the meteor come down? Did you see the shooting star? It shook my house. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, there would be a lot of things about it. And there's just nothing. And I don't know if that lends credence to the boy's story or takes
they're
away
like,
from it.
Prove that they made it up. So they're like, you know what? Let's not embarrass families. We just won't report on it anymore.
Yeah, we're just going to shut the hell up because
yeah,
little Johnny's a lying asshole. And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
And his dad's active in the church and mom's on the,
PTA.
Yes.
Well, there are like a lot of random... I just shout outs to other random shit that's in the Appalachian. There's the Wampus cat. There is a death cat.
This is how I'm gonna fucking die.
It's a kitty. There's like...
Don't, Angie, it's a death cat.
To me, the weirdest story is like... Have you guys heard of like the Grimms and stuff like that? Like, where like people would... Like, they were supposed to be death... Like, spirit dogs that would ward off evil, like, at graveyards. So people would literally bury their dogs alive in their graveyards. So their dogs would become Grimms. Mm-hmm. Like, that's another, like, Appalachian animal. There's, like, a whole ton of, like, random...
Yeah, that seems more like...
Wolfman.
We had a bunch of puppies and we don't want to feed them scenario.
Yeah.
I would like to think it was just a very bad practice.
That's like my stepdad putting puppies and kittens in a bag and being like, I'm going to go see a man about a dog. And then he comes back and doesn't have them. And I know he went out into the pasture and threw those, he probably threw them in the creek.
Oh, no.
But, it like that happened so many times. And every time I believed, he'd be like, I'm going to go see a man about a horse. And I would think he's coming back with a horse. And I get so excited every time. He must have thought, this is the stupidest kid in the entire world.
We're going to take your dog off to the farm. That farm must have a lot of dogs on it.
when I first moved in here, there was a lady in the neighborhood I lived. It was a pretty scandalous neighborhood, and she got taken off to jail, and her dog was 12 years old, huge black lab, but huge, I mean fat.
Yeah, just a big boy.
Yeah, and what was her name? Scooter? I can't remember.
Scout.
Yeah, and since the dog laid in the middle of the road where she was arrested. I mean, grieving for her. So I was like, well, I can't leave the dog there. But my dad was like, let me take her. I've got this neighbor. I'm going to go. She can run in the pasture for the rest of her days. And da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, that would be great. And I was 32.
Wait, no way. Did something actually happen?
I don't know. But now in hindsight.
I don't think so. I think that they probably actually took the dog.
I hope so.
Because they took Lily, too.
I know.
I'm just saying, that farm's got a lot of dogs
So
on
how
it.
about we talk about ghost dogs instead? And like wampus cats and like weird cryptid wolfmen. There's like all kinds of shit that lives out in the...
And they call their Sasquatches up that way in Virginia stonemen. Because they stand still as stone. There's the Jersey Devil as part of these legends.
There's a lot of really creepy shit up there.
A lot of stuff that you hear about are Appalachian monsters.
We like to take credit for all of that, Well,
and speaking of meteors and crazy Appalachian stuff, the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland was the site of not one but like two huge, awful, like Pangea breaking apart. Some people say it started with what impacted in Chesapeake and split. It's very deep and very creepy. It is extremely rocky. Like, I don't think it was meant to be water right there.
Yeah, it was probably going to be land before anything hit it.
It's just it feels like paper that you rip apart, and it's got like the pieces. That's what the rocks feel like. There's no sand anywhere, and it's like this black rock and shale, and it's just not pleasant. From swimming here in Georgia and Florida, and then going up there and like, let's go swimming on the beaches and on base, and it's like, ooh, this isn't a beach.
Nice rocks you've got here.
Yeah, and I didn't have shoes the first time. I'm like, no, this is. And then on top of it, there's fucking sharks that swim in. I remember one time, like, I was brave enough to get out into the water. Of course, we had on our shoes. Christy was actually up. That's when she lived with me. And we walked out. Because you could walk it felt like you could walk all the way to New Jersey because that's how close it was. Yeah. You could see Washington, D.C. and New Jersey over here. But you could walk way out to the sandbars. So we were walking out to the sandbars, and we were keeping, like, fingertip distance. I don't remember why, but we would keep our fingertips like this. We had walked way out, and it's like you walk through a deep part, and then suddenly it's just really shallow. And then we were kind of stepping back down to our waist, and something touched all of our legs at the same time, and we were a good, like, 20, 25 feet apart. Once again, I beat every motherfucker in that water back to the shore. And yes, that was kids and sister.
Daddy's going to call School of Fish. Swim past everybody at the same time because that's how School of Fish works.
It's very soft.
Hey, you want to see something funny?
Watch this.
But yeah, not going to say it's the Loch Ness Chesapeake River monster.
But it could have been.
Going to say it's a School of Fish because that makes way more sense.
Let me tell you, if you're ever anywhere with me with something scary, like, I may try and save you, Becky, but I cannot.
Oh, I totally don't expect you to save me at this point. I've been with you long enough to know.
Like when the growl happened at the cabin, I was gone.
No, I 100% have to save. It's either I'm going to have to save you and me, or I'm just going to have to let you go. Because if something happens to me, you're like, find somebody else. Gotta go. Bye. You were the older model anyways.
I wouldn't do all that. I'd be too busy running. I need to save my breath.
I'm going to trip Angie right away.
You should.
Dunk.
You should.
Oh, what happened? Come here, monster. This is dinner.
Trip me on my bad leg.
God damn it. All right, well.
I would stop, drop, and roll like a motherfucker. You're like, how is she doing that on solid ground?
Nope. Daddy's going to try to get some not deer meat.
Cook it up with your Sasquatch meat.
Seriously, if I ever catch a Sasquatch, I'm going to eat that fucker.
Just see what he tastes like.
Yep.
Well, you guys have a nice day.
Love you.
Bye.
We also still don't know where Bobby's at.
Yo, yeah. Bobby Watch 2022 continues. Most likely will continue into 2023.
He might be a weirdo.
I will say
he might be dead.
He did see something in Messenger at one point because his little eye, that little icon that says red came up.
How long ago was this? Recently?
It was recent. It was like a couple days ago. We were talking about the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Or hear me out. Something's happened to him, and they were like, investigating his phone.
I think we should do a giveaway. Because Wires did that great, like, milk carton picture of Bobby. If y'all could come up with really awesome missing posters, we will give away something. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe it's like a $25 gift card to like Amazon, but that's going to be our next giveaway.
If it's truly epic,
yeah.
It'll be an epic gift.
Yeah. And I want, like, if you can get it going, like, post this picture, like, do a good missing photo thing for it. We will, you'll get something out of it. I can assure you that. I don't know what yet, but, plan on. All right, cool. All right.
Good story.
Goodbye, guys.
Love you.
Bye.